In this week's episode of Love as a Business Strategy, we have a returning guest. JeVon McCormick is the CEO of Scribe Media, and the last time he was on the show, things got uncomfortable, but in the best kind of way. This time, he joins us to talk about diversity and inclusion from his unique lived experiences, and we open up some very real discussions. There is language in this episode that may be unsuitable for younger listeners, but hey, if your kids are listening to business podcasts, maybe they can handle it. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Love as a Business Strategy, a podcast that brings humanity to the workplace. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone to check out our best-selling book. And since you found this podcast, it'll be easy to find the book. It's also called Love as a Business Strategy. It's not your typical business book. And just like this show, it's laid back, real, and honest. Everyone on camera is holding up their copy of the book right now. It's fantastic. So go check it out on Amazon or your favorite retailer right now. But hey, as you know, we're here to talk about business. We want to tackle topics that most business leaders shy away from. We believe that humanity and love should be at the center of every successful business. I am your host, Jeff Ma, and I'm a director at Softway, which is a business-to-employee solutions company that creates products and offers services that help build resilience and high-performance company cultures. I am joined today by many people, starting with Mohammed Anwar, President and CEO of Softway. Hello, Mohammed.
Hello, Jeff.
And then Chris Petrie, Vice President. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
And Frank, my fellow director. How are you doing?
Hello, Jeff.
There are 5 people here. If you're watching us on a video, there's 5 people. And when you see all 5 of us, that can be only for one reason. It's because, of course, we have JeVon McCormick in the house. I cannot get anybody to step out of this episode. We all insisted.
That's right.
We had to be
We're all
here.
showing up.
CEO of Scribe Media. And if you haven't seen the first episode that JeVon was on, pause this, go watch it or listen to it, and come back. We had an amazing time. We had a blast. I made him promise to come back. He has lived up to that promise. JeVon, thank you for joining us once again here on the podcast.
Gentlemen, this is let's burn it down.
Come on.
See, we're already warm this time. We're just picking up where we left off, but we're still going to do an icebreaker.
All right.
Okay. We're still going to do an icebreaker. And this time, we're going to definitely save JeVon for last on this one. And I'm going to start with Frank. Frank, are you ready?
No.
We're all getting the same question. So everybody else, this is hard for you and easy for everybody else. Frank, what did you get in the most trouble for as a kid?
When I was 7 years old, I decided to raid my grandmother's pantry for flour. And I grabbed a bunch of flour and I put it in a big bowl of water. And then for some reason, I walked around her house and I splattered it on the couches. And I don't even understand why that happened or anything else. But I remember my grandmother walking in and just freaking out because there were these splatters of, flour and water mixture everywhere. And she had to hire professional cleaners to come and clean her entire house. And to this day, I do not know why I did that or why that happened. But that is the thing I got in most trouble for when I was a kid.
And it feels like Levi, your son, has actually brought that karma full circle.
100%.
Back to you in the way he's. Anyways, there's another story there. Okay.
Frank was getting his Jackson Pollock on.
For sure.
Chris, you're up next. What did you get in the most trouble for as a kid?
As you can probably imagine, my smart mouth was the thing that got me in the most trouble. So much so that there's a story that I don't even recall, but everyone in my family reminds me of, which is there was this one day, we were getting in the car and it was me and my sister and an older cousin and my mom. And my sister was taking a really long time to get in. I don't recall this at all, but this is the story that I get told. And, she was taking her sweet, precious time and I was apparently in a hurry. And I just turned around and said, Candace, get your skinny blank in the car. And it was like the A word, right? And my mom just turned around and just gave me a backhand to the mouth. And she had this big ring at the time. And so everybody just recalls this Chris's teeth, right? But I don't remember any of this happening. But I've been told that this is one of the most memorable sort of discipline situations, but also smart mouth situations that I've been in.
So what I'm hearing is she hit you so hard you got a concussion and don't remember this.
Oh my gosh, moment. This is a take.
I think that's what I think. I got.
You gotta say it the way Chris's mom would have said it. Boy, I will slap the memory out of your ass.
Right. And it went. I don't recall this.
It went.
Everybody else remembers this. And I was like, I don't know if I just suppressed it. I don't know if I got hit that hard, but I don't remember. But I said
woke up the next day. Ooh. All right. Well, Muhammad, you are next. What did you get in the most trouble for as a kid?
I think I got in trouble quite a bit, but the one that stands out to me, I think that I remember and had the most impact on me was I was visiting, a family friend's home with my family, and I came back home with a toy from their house that I just decided to take back with me. And when I got home, I showed it to my parents, and my parents were like, "Where did you get that from?" I'm like, I picked it up from their house. And that was it. That was my lesson on what does stealing mean and what I've done and how I need to go back and return it and face the consequences of it. So
that's it.
After that day, I've never like.
That's your worst.
That was, but that's what I remember.
Mo, that is so weak. We've all done that.
Mo, did you get an ass whooping or something? I mean, finish the story.
I did not get an ass whooping, but I do remember that feeling of embarrassment, and the shame was just horrendous. That's all I can tell you. That's why I remember it. Like, that was enough.
Thank you, Mo. Such a goody. I will share mine as well. I usually don't do this, but mine was because I will never forget it. I was very young, but I was obsessed at the time with the garage door opener. I'd always be the one. I was like, when we pull up from home, I wanted to be the one to open the garage doors, an old school, just manual, kind of pressy little thing. And then I did that regularly. And one night we were pulling in, and I decided to press close while we were halfway into the thing. The door came down and crunched the car, broke the garage door and the roof of the car. And I mean, it was, I also blacked out, Chris. I also have no further memory from that day. But
oh my gosh.
JeVon, you're up. What did you get in the most trouble for as a kid?
Oh, man, so okay. This sucks because you guys are kind of making me be that person. We've all met this person before where you tell them you've been to Disney World and they tell you they've been there 3 times, or you tell them you got on the roller coaster, I rode 8 times. So you guys are making me be the I've been 3 times person. Mine was we talked a little bit about this last time. Mine was for fighting back against my dad's prostitute, and she called the police on me. And then they took me to juvenile. That was what I got in the most trouble for. She was hitting me. I got tired of getting beat. I fought back. She was white. They called the police. Guess who goes to jail? And so that was the worst. Now, outside of that, because you can chalk that up to like some criminal shit. I was playing with matches one time, and my mom caught me. And my mom didn't discipline me. She said, I'm going to tell your dad. And I remember this. I remember saying to myself, wait a minute. I can't even get him to come pick me up. What's he going to do? And so I was like, okay, cool. You tell him, I was like, he's not going to show up. I'll be damned. I'm like, okay, you can't show up when it's time to pick me up, but you show up for an ass whooping. I'm like, what kind of shit is this?
Time and place.
Yeah. And unlike Jeff and Chris, I remember it. Yeah. So there you go, man.
But I do remember plenty of other beatings. Just FYI, I do remember plenty of others. But that one is the one that I can't forget it because I'm always reminded of it.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the award goes to JeVon. You win with multiple stories. That
like I said, now I'm the 3-time Disney World person.
Well, JeVon, when we last talked, we only touched very lightly. At the time, I think someone said D&I, and I know that's a term you don't like. And we said, why not? And we wanted to dive further into it. And we just, there's this whole thing to unpack here. And so we thought it'd be great to start there today. And maybe you could start us off, talk about diversity and inclusion. I'll say the whole phrase, and tell us why do you have a problem with the term D&I, and where does that sit for you? And what are your passions around this topic?
I feel that as a society, for the most part, people will try to say they've shortened it into an acronym because it's easier to say. No, what's easier to say is when you say diversity, that's hard to say because now we're talking about minorities. Now we're talking about gays. Now we're talking about, there's a whole lot that goes into diversity. And that's a tough word to say. Diversity is, for me, is, all of us here are old enough to remember, you were always taught, don't talk religion and politics in the workplace. No, diversity's on the list too. Don't talk diversity. That has been a rule for years, because that's a very uncomfortable conversation, because you've got to address the big ass elephant that, oh, wow, we've got 2,000 people working with us and there's only 8 minorities. Oh yeah, diversity is kind of hard to talk about right now. So I feel that when you shorten it, you are making it easy, and it not in the sense of, well, it's just a hard word to say. No, it's not. It's diversity and inclusion. It's not hard to say. It's a mouthful. No, it's hurtful. That's why you don't want to say it. So I cringe every time I see it written D&I, or I hear people say, I'm like, come on, say the word. But yeah, it just rubs me the wrong way, because I know why people are shortening it. Maybe not everybody, but the great majority are shortening it because it is a very difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And JeVon, I also know that you have some thoughts about diversity separate from inclusion and how they connect or intersect or not in certain situations. But I would love to hear you sort of go deeper into sort of what it means to, one, have diversity, but then what does it mean to include that diversity?
Well, so I've said this, I believe we said it last time we were all together. One, diversity doesn't have a finish line. It's continuous. It's like payroll. It didn't stop it. You got to keep writing the payroll check. So it's a way of life, and we should stop treating it as a mission. Because a mission has an end goal. If you're in the military, what's our mission? You have an end goal. Diversity has no finish line. You just keep going. It should just be a part of your life, a part of your culture, and a part of our country. There should be no separation of, we finished. But more importantly, here's what you're seeing right now in society. Oddly enough, here we are all together, and the George Floyd anniversary was 2 days ago, yesterday,
yeah.
2 days ago, I think.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because now everyone's talking about, okay, what actually has been done in the workplace? What have we done as a society? And you've got all these people out there, companies touting what they've done to attract diversity and bring in candidates. But no one's talking about, what is it like for diverse candidates once they make it into the workplace? What's that look like? No one wants to address the fact that, and I'll speak for myself. You all know I'm the old man here. I remember working at places, and there may be 2 or 3 other minorities in the workplace, and you strayed away from those minorities because you didn't want to be marked as a troublemaker. And so you wanted to fit in because the playbook was you had a certain name, you went to a certain school, you come from a certain background. And so if you didn't fit into that playbook, you were doing everything you could to try to assimilate and fit in, and you didn't want to associate with the other minorities because they're forming a group, they're the troublemaker. And so no one talks about that. But here's something we had inside Scribe. So we hired one mixed race woman. She's half white, half black, and she's gay. And we hired another black woman, and they wanted to test the culture. And so we had a Zoom call, and they wore their head wraps. So in the black community, a lot of black women will wear head wraps for their hair to keep it moisturized, keep it in place, whatever. Well, in corporate America, and they both said it, you can get fired for wearing a head wrap. And so they wanted to see what would happen. So they wore their head wraps to a Zoom call, and here's what happened. Oh my God, your hair wrap is so beautiful. And they were taken back, like, wow, you all really are doing it different. They were accepted. They were welcomed. No one looked at them crazy. And that's a very unusual thing from corporate America, where you're looked at different for, why are you wearing a head wrap on a Zoom call? And so those are just different elements that take place inside that people don't talk about. Last one I'll share with you all that we just went through. This is powerful, because let's be honest on the other side of this. Right now, when everyone is saying diversity, most are talking about Black people. That's what the majority of the diversity word is addressing right now. But no one's talking about what is it to be Middle Eastern? What is it to be Hispanic, Mexican, Latino? No one's talking about that. This has been very Black focused. And me being half Black, I'll call it what it is. But here's something that just took place with us. So we were doing our interviews, and I'm always the last person that interviews candidates on site. I'm the last person they speak with. So before I went to walk into this interview, I asked one of our tribe members, Rosalia, I said, hey, Rosalia, how much time should I spend in here? And she goes, oh, no, she's good. She's good. Spend some time. She goes, but I have a big concern. And I go, okay, stop right there. Don't tell me. So I went in, did the interview. Interview went great. Loved it. She's phenomenal. But I walked out and I said, hey, Rosalia, what's the problem? What'd you see? She goes, well, I'm a little nervous that you wouldn't want to hire her because of her accent. So she's Mexican and she's got a heavy accent, and she'll say things like, instead of saying chair, so she'll say share. Instead of saying shamu, she'll say chamu. And so Rosalia, that culture of the Mexican culture, especially here in Texas, Rosalia was concerned that, she goes, will we hire her? I'm nervous. She's great. She can do the job. And I said, I tell you what, Rosalia, if we have anyone who dares say something about her accent, if we have a client, an author on the phone who dares say something about her accent, we'll either fire the tribe member or fire the author. I said, that's bullshit. We're not going down that path. I said, she's going to be a phenomenal tribe member. She's going to be a great addition to the tribe, and we're going to hire her. And Rosalia lit up like, wow. Because that's the part that people aren't talking about in corporate America when it comes to diversity. That happens. That happens where people who have that type of accent don't get hired.
Yep. No, wow. I completely agree. Have seen stories, heard of it, and I think you bring up an excellent point and an excellent conversation. Actually, this is going to be a longer conversation because I'm not going to let it go. But when it let's be honest. But when we talk about inclusion, I do think that there is less emphasis and less budget around that, and everyone invests in that diversity hiring and recruiting, and all the attention goes there. And then people do show up, and it's like, what is this? And either find coping mechanisms or leave, right? And
yeah.
The unfortunate part is that, being a minority or a marginalized group, as you mentioned, it's not just Black people, and that's typically where the conversation veers, and or it creates tension among all the minorities, where who's getting the attention becomes the darling, and then you have the struggle Olympics between them, and everybody's vying for the same attention, and the whole big picture is missed, right? Because it's a mission and it's not a way of life. Right. And it creates that tension among the minority groups, right? Because everybody's fighting for the same pot of money, the same attention, the same sponsors, the same sort of influence, right? And there has not yet been space mentally as well as physically for everyone to exist as well as be included in conversations and decisions in the promotional velocity within the organization. And everybody typically exits where they enter, right? As a person of color or minority, whatever role you were hired at, you might not be just 1 or 2 levels above that before you have to leave and go and actually take your next jump. Right. Whereas when you look at sort of the majority counterparts that you might have, you know, they grow, like they have a mentor or some advocate, you know, who's just like, oh man, reminds me of my son, right? Like pulls them up and, you know, sort of gives them a promotion, gives them opportunity. Even if they fail, they still don't pay the cost of that failure like others do. And it's something where, unfortunately, in organizations, when you start talking about this, you know, people shut down because they're like, so you're calling me racist? Are you calling me right? And it's like, I'm not saying any of that. Yeah, it's like, what I'm saying is our experience. It's like, what I'm saying is our experiences are different. And there is something that's driving that difference. And we haven't yet untapped it. We haven't uncovered it. We haven't gotten to the bottom of it. And I know for me, when I was first promoted, this was before Softway, I was the only Black person, right? I got promoted to director, and the VP of the organization did not want me to join the director meetings. So our conference rooms were fully glass, so you can see through, so everybody could see, wow, the directors are meeting, but Chris is sitting out, you know, at the cube, like what the, and they would come and say like, Chris, shouldn't you be in that meeting? Shouldn't you be in that meeting? And I'm like, yeah, but I think they're waiting. Like, I think, right. Like, and you try and sort of shrug it off. Yeah. And then I finally confront the VP, and he's like, oh, well, it would make everybody else uncomfortable if you were to join that meeting. I mean, yesterday you were just this, and now you're at their level. So it's going to take a while for them to adjust. And, you know, I'm like, that's wrong. Right. Like that's, right. You know, like what the hell, like that, who does that? Like, where does that mentality come from? And if they're uncomfortable, whose problem is that? Right. And so you have sort of this situation where even if you get that promotional velocity, there's still going to be that question mark of, am I actually allowed to sit here? Can I actually use my voice? Can I actually have a platform? And I think that's unfortunate, but that's still sort of the battle that is raging in the diversity and inclusion space, especially on that inclusion side.
Well, so, hey, remind me, y'all. I feel it, Jeff. It's coming on. It's coming on. Did we talk about Dante Wright last time on our call?
Yes, no, so.
Maybe so. Okay,
I don't think so.
Do you guys know who Dante Wright is, right?
Okay, you're already 1 foot in. Let's do this.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. Yeah. So, did you all see when the Derek Chauvin the trial was going on, that kid Dante Wright got shot right down the street from when the trial was the same week it was going on
in the time frame.
Yes. Yeah. So people lost their minds on me when I brought this up in a good way, because a lot of people weren't thinking about this. All right, because we're going to get a lot of comments on this one. Yeah. So here's what happened. So Dante Wright was shot and killed. And we saw that. Here was the narrative. Another Black man shot and killed, Minneapolis, Derek Chauvin trial going on, George Floyd, all of it. Another Black man shot and killed. It was in the media, it was in print, blogs, everywhere. And then I was watching the news and I saw Dante Wright's parents. His mom was white, dad was Black. And I was like, interesting. They keep referring to him as a Black man, another Black man shot, because the narrative that needs to be kept is another Black man shot. He's mixed race. So here's my problem with this. We have gone out of our way as a country, just bent over backwards. We have put planes in the sky that are skywriting that Kamala Harris is mixed race. We have screamed it globally. First mixed race VP. Why doesn't Dante Wright get the same respect to be called mixed man was shot and killed? His mom and dad are white and Black. We've gone out of our way for Kamala Harris. So why can't we go out of our way for Dante Wright to be referred to as mixed race man shot and killed? And it's little things like that, in my opinion, that keep this cycle going, where we claim we want to bring change. We claim is that we want to see things done different. And I'll even go a step further. We're running around pulling down statues, and I'm not saying we shouldn't. I think it's a good thing. But here's my problem. We do some very surface shit in our society. So we've got a problem with syrup bottles. We got a problem with statues. We'll say Kamala Harris is mixed race, which she is, but so was Dante Wright. But here's the thing. When America references a mixed race person as Black, the reason they're doing it is because there was a rule back in slavery that was written, a law, that if you have one drop of Black blood, you're Black. And if we're truly trying to right our wrongs in this country, then we need to do it holistically and not on the surface level of, oh, tear down the statue. Oh, Kamala Harris, first mixed race. Okay, well, then let's be consistent in our efforts and not pick and choose where those efforts benefit us as a society because it's a good photo op or a good piece for the media.
Yep. So I agree.
I was just going to say, so, I mean, this is a challenge, right, John? So how do we solve this problem? How do we make sure that there's a real solution to these issues? Because you're right, we can't just go solve this by pulling down statues. I mean, we can't like go do those drastic things and then hope that it all goes away. So I want to ask, like, what have organizations done in the last year? Especially, I focus on the business side because I feel like we have the most influence from the workplace. I mean, besides thumping their chest and saying, look, we hired, look at us, we won a D&I award and so forth. Like, what real difference have they made?
Right.
I want to know. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm asking, not because I think but I'm like trying to create this debate here. So how do we solve this problem?
I don't know that there's well, here's the thing. I love this because we're talking about love as a strategy. And we all know, especially in business, there's never one thing. There's never one thing. And so, but we do know that if we all get together right now, we have an executive meeting, we say, look, our profit margins have to get to 15%. We're going to find a way that we're going to keep saying that every meeting, hey, 15%, 15%, 30, whatever it is we're after that profit margin, we're going to keep beating it. And until we start, and you're going to start to see it tick up. Oh, here it comes. Here it comes. And I feel like with diversity, and I said this back when the George Floyd murder first happened, it's got to be consistency. We have a tendency in this country to swing the pendulum so hard for what's the new hotness, what's the new initiative, and then it falls off. And you look no further than Ferguson. Remember Michael Brown? For 2 weeks, everybody was pissed off, burned down the city, everything, but then it went away, and then that was it. And so the key for me, the number one word, and it's sad because it's the biggest word that I feel that is missing in our country, is consistency. We're not consistent anymore. Everybody wants instant gratification. Everybody wants it right now. Think about the gym. If somebody wants to lose 30 pounds, we have the audacity. We want to go to the gym at 2:00 in the afternoon, and we want to lose that 30 pounds by 4 p.m. Hell, we're a society that people are like, I don't want to wait till 4. I want to lose it by 3. And so, but we're not consistent anymore. Everything's instant gratification. Everything's the next swipe, everything. And so with diversity, I don't believe there's one solution. It's going to take multiple things of consistent effort, consistently talking about it, bringing it up, showing that attention of here are the things that we need to address. Doesn't need to make anybody right or wrong, but these are the things that we need to address. Just like the Dante Wright thing. When I said that, people were shocked. They're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. I go, I know that. And so those are the little things that we have to show. You can't just celebrate Kamala Harris's mixed race because she's the first female vice president. If we're going to do that, then let's be consistent all the way through and show that same respect to everyone. That kid should get the same respect to be called mixed race. His mom's white, his dad's black. They should get the respect. They had a mixed race son. Show them respect.
Sure. So I think consistency is one thing, and I agree with you, but I also think that we're not really looking for the right solution to be consistent with, right? Like we're missing the point where we're doing all these things for the wrong reasons. We're doing it to superficially show off. We're not doing it for genuine reasons of bringing about change. We're not like, if you're going on social media and broadcasting, look at us, we've hired a D&I officer, look at us, we won this D&I award, then is it really being done for the right reason?
Yep.
So I don't care. Like, to be honest, JeVon, they're freaking consistent on social media. I'll tell you that.
And bullshit. They consistently show you bullshit.
Yeah. So that's why I think consistency aside, I don't think we're even looking at this problem the right way. I don't think we're trying to approach it the right way.
I do believe there are some people who have, you all, us here at Scribe, us here on this call. I also believe that diversity has to be called out holistically. And what I mean by that, we were in a meeting the other day. It was our diversity call as a tribe. And we had a gay, half white, half black woman in the room. We had a black woman in the room. We had a gay white woman in the room. We had a white woman in the room. But I shocked everybody when I said this. We also had a white man in the room who had just come out of the military. He spent 8 years in the military. He was an officer. We are his first civilian job he ever has had. And I called this out to people. I go, and you know what? He's part of diversity too, because we've never had that. And a lot of people are so just, white guy, you're not included. And I'm like, hold on. Don't swing the pendulum so far to where now we're trying to exclude people. It's like we want to punish for some shit that was going on. Now all white people have to pay. And I'm like, that's such bullshit. Muhammad, here's another one. Oh man.
Let's go.
So, Chris, tell me if you're understanding me when I say this. I personally cannot stand, I've seen this several times. A white person will come to a black person and ask to be educated about the things they don't know. And I've seen some black people say, it is not my job to educate you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. You can't bitch because people are trying to, you don't understand me. You don't understand what I've been through. And now they're trying to understand. And then you want to be mad at that too. No, it's like you have to educate with the best intention. I'm not going to go to the level of how I've been discriminated against or people who didn't care about my background. If someone is truly coming to me seeking to learn, understand, then I have a responsibility to educate them and teach them. I can't just turn you away.
No, I completely agree. And I've been in those situations, overheard those conversations, and I'm like, what are you like? Everything that you've been asking for is about to happen. And now you're like, how dare you ask me to educate, right? And like they turn it into this thing that it's not meant to be. But personally, I've always felt like if someone is that brave and courageous to come and say, I know I need to know this and I don't know where to go or how to start or whatever, like that is my responsibility, but also it's an honor that they trust you enough. Right. To start there with you. And I think that there's a lot of people, and it's not just black, it's like anytime there's a difference and someone is sort of ignorant or not as aware of what happens in that culture, whenever someone's willing to submit themselves and say like, I don't know any, like, can you help me? I don't, right. It's just almost like when you go to a foreign country, you can't speak the language. Right. It's like you have to ask for, you have to get someone to show you what to do, how to ask, how to speak, where to go, all of those things. And when you have, when you have those folks that turn away or just like are repulsed because you dare ask them to help you, you just wonder like, what mindset do you have to have that reaction when someone who is clearly in need is coming to you of all people? Clearly there's something that they trust about you. Clearly there's something that they see in you. Clearly it's something they believe about you, that they would open up to allow for that type of, input, control or information to come, right? Because when you educate people, you ultimately are in control, right? Yeah. And I think that's a deep topic to get into. We can talk about Western education. But
hey, you see Chris trying to set up a part 3. You see that?
Yeah, part 3. Y'all, I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to try not to get emotional, but people are so unwilling to see the value of diversity. they're so unwilling to see the unique attributes of different people's perspectives and lived experiences. JeVon, what I love about you so much is that you are an executive who doesn't have an on-off switch. You are you. And I was with an executive over the weekend, multi hundreds of millions of dollars technology organization. And he was sitting there making fun of someone who's going through a transition, because all he does is he shows up to work to make sure that he doesn't have EEOC violations and HR doesn't come and complain. And so he'll flip that switch and act the way he needs to act in order to not be seen as insert title here.
Right.
And then as soon as that turns off, he'll speak about them behind their back.
Yeah.
He'll make fun of the pronouns. He'll make fun of the identity. He'll make fun of the individual. And the problem is when we don't have leaders that truly care about the humanity of the person, then you are not able to build real inclusion. Yeah. And I'm so frustrated by the fact that there are so many leaders in corporate America, it doesn't matter what type of organization we're talking about, that do not see the value and decide that what they're going to do is, instead of learn and understand and try to connect and build bridges across difference, they would rather just pretend to care. And then when they leave work, what they talk about on the golf course, what they talk about in conversations with their good old boy network is discrimination and hatred and vile. And it needs to be called out. I personally, I believe that the more leaders that see that try to create an empathetic connection with people, the more value that brings. Like when the stories you just told us about you in the room bringing more inclusive behaviors to your team, showing them different perspectives of how to look at things from different vantage points and angles, that is so inspiring, because you're showing them how to see the world in a unique way that values collaboration and identity. And it's so refreshing to me, number one. And number two, I see such a massive necessity placed upon leaders to understand the impact and the reality that diversity and inclusion plays. That's all I was going to say. I just want to let you know, like, it's. Yeah.
Let's get one for Frank. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
hold on.
Listen,
Frank, I want to talk about that a little bit. Like,
let's talk about it.
I agree that those behaviors and those acts are, horrible, but I think just calling it out ain't gonna fix it.
No,
I think we have to figure out, how are we going to influence these leaders to change? But how do we make them change? Do you think calling out is just going to all of a sudden one day they're like, oh, I got called out, so I'll change? No, they'll turn the switch on even more.
That'll fade. Just like a statue being torn down, it'll fade. It'll fade out of memory when it's not in focus.
Or they'll learn to keep the switch on the whole time.
That's fair. But then you'll still see through it. The cracks will emerge. Right? Like the facade will break eventually. And then what you have is a broken culture built off of lies and false promises. I mean, it will evaporate.
Muhammad, you bring up a great point. I feel what starts to break that, and it's a very slow go, but there's, and I don't mean this is disrespectful to Jeff, Chris, or Frank, but the JeVons and the Muhammads of the world that have hit the CEO chair are few and far between. Yeah. And so what the slow go that has to happen is, as we rise to those chairs, that CEO chair, then the behaviors will change as well. Because I promise you, what's happening right now with the person that Frank just brought up is, whoever he is surrounded by with his corporate executive team, he has shared some of those racist behaviors with them. Mm-hmm. So Absolutely. They're going to assimilate to how he is, because they want to make sure they stay in that circle of, let me make sure I get my check, my stock options, my bonus. So then that starts to trickle down, because then that next level of people are like, well, I got to stay close to that director or that VP. Yep. And so that's the thing, to Frank's point, where I totally agree with. When you have a Muhammad Muhammad, when you have a JeVon in those chairs, the behaviors start to change. And I'm not a trickle down person. I'm a trickle up person because my role is to support the people that I serve. And so the behaviors start to change. And I'm going to go left for a little bit, but think about this for a second. Did this on a keynote recently. And I said, let me explain to you what a slave plantation looks like. And I went down this path and I started explaining what a slave plantation looks like. I said, they come to work, they put in all this effort, and they don't get paid. I go, but you put a roof over their head and you feed them a little bit, and then that way you keep them working in the field. I said, that's a slave plantation. I said, or is that college football? I said, because they don't get paid. I go, but they get a room, a dorm, they get fed, but they got to hit that field. And so someone pushed back and they were like, yeah, but they get a free education. I said, so does the person that got the full ride scholarship in biology, but they're not having to work in the field to produce revenue for the school. And in fact, for the person who got the full ride biology, guess who's paying for that? The field hands that are going out to the field each day. And I said, here's what bothers me the most. I don't have I do have a problem with it, but my bigger problem is you're going to tell me that all the black men that have come through the NCAA football program, all the black men that have come through the NCAA basketball program, you're going to tell me that with all of the black men who have played that sport, none of them, you shouldn't have a larger concentration of coaches, assistant coaches. Where they played the sport. You're going to tell me they don't understand it? They can't be coaches? And so when I look at this, to your point, Muhammad, it is all around us because that's a deal that's being just repeated over and over. Then they make it to the NFL, and even the NFL, how come we don't have more black coaches there? I'm like, are you kidding me? And you see some of the same recycled coaches that you sucked at that team, and then you got hired at this team. But the Eric Bieniemy, who won the damn Super Bowl with Kansas City, he can't get a head coaching job. I'm like, how is this? And no one talks about this. So it's all around us, and it's just little pieces just being completely and I'll shut up. It's constantly bringing it top of mind. Just like I said, go back to us in business. If we say we want our profit margins to be 35%, you keep it top of mind. Eventually, we're going to get to 35%.
Yep. And I was having a conversation the other day about like engagement surveys. And what's interesting about engagement surveys, which, if done correctly, can be a wealth of information and insight. But unfortunately, many organizations not only set them up poorly, meaning there's no self-ID data, so you don't know who's saying what about the organization. But also, when you look at the sort of results, everyone tends to look at the majority. Ooh, 80% of our team are happy here. We're doing great. And when you talk about diversity and inclusion, it's the 20% that we should be looking at. And who are in those 20%?
Right.
And if they look different, are different, behave different, talk different, like that difference is not happy at this organization. And diversity and inclusion is meant to solve that problem, not just to maintain the happiness and the comfort of that 80%. And many D&I initiatives, diversity and inclusion initiatives, as well as the social media, chest, thumping is all about, look, we have 87% of our employees who are happy here. And I'm like, but you got 13% that are unhappy.
Yeah, don't pay attention to them.
Yeah, who's helping them? And I was like, and I'm pretty sure they look a lot like me. We're not talking about that though. But that is sometimes the issue that many sort of, enterprise, large, complex organizations, sort of how they handle it and how they sort of train their brains to think if I'm over X amount, we're good, but they don't think those that are under this amount are not good. And I am meant to solve it for everyone, not just the ones who are saying they like it here.
Yep.
But if they missed their profit goal by 13%, they'd be fired. But if they missed their employee engagement survey by 13%, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, we
There it
celebrate
is.
it. We celebrate it on
Totally.
social media.
Come on now.
Totally. Yeah. So social media is a man, that's a
It's a thing.
Yeah,
It's a
it's a thing. Yeah, oh man, there's just so much fakeness in social media. That's a whole different. As Chris said, that's a different. That's part 3.
It's part 3.
It's it's virtue signaling, right? Like that's the term that officials have given it. But that idea that if we just say that we're doing good, people will believe us, but we don't have to prove it. And I hate to call out companies, but I was reading this piece about IDEO, which in our previous industry where we competed, design and digital agency background, like they were sort of the gold standard. And then you read these articles that are coming out from previous, employees of color and women about the experiences they had in those walls and how open and unashamed people were in that behavior. And you go back to what Muhammad said about like that awareness of behavior and how long do we tolerate the consistency in communication around the efforts that we want to do and sort of ignore the lack of consistency around behavioral change. Because no matter what sort of insights you get, no matter what conversation you want to start with, at the end of the day, the solution lies in behaviors and the individual behaviors and self-awareness around those behaviors. Because if we have a situation where women say they are uncomfortable, the solution is not just to change a process, right? The solution is not just to go and hire more women. The solution is we have to change what we've been doing to make those women uncomfortable. And that takes hard work. And that's self-work. That's not an enterprise process and policy that we can stand up to say like women will therefore now be comfortable here. And that is it, right? Like there has to be hard work and that's individual. And you also have to sort of keep people in that lane of, it's not for you to go and find out who said what, because that's typically what humans want to do is find out who said it so I can punish them or get even or get rid of them, whatever the case may be. But to say, I have to assume that everybody said this. So now I have to believe that I must change because I cannot go and punish someone or find the culprit or, just deal with them, because you don't know when you look at diverse, and sort of marginalized groups, who is the most vocal or who has the proper influence, right? And I think that conversation rarely happens because most leaders do not want to do that self-work. That is difficult. And many of them believe they've already done it. That's how I got here, because I did that self-work. It wasn't, sort of the misbehaviors that got me here. It's the fact that I'm great. And I've been told I was great my entire life. And that problem, that challenge is something that many diversity and inclusion practitioners are facing, as well as just leaders who mean well, who actually see the issue. They can get their teams to be self-aware, their peers to be self-aware, their direct reports to be self-aware. And, trying to bring that about is a lot of work, especially when it's not just you that has to make those changes.
Yeah. I think they start from the data and they're focused on the data instead of focusing the behaviors behind the data. Mm-hmm. And so it's all about proving out numbers, showing numbers, and they've taken this whole thing, even like with HR. And I believe HR is the solution to start solving these problems. But let's face it, I think they created the problem to begin with by instituting systems and processes that marginalize people or exclude, minorities and so forth. So now we're handing them the responsibility to let's go solve the problem you created. I baffles me, number one, but number two, it's also like everything is driven by numbers. It's like data. Yeah, the data is God, I understand, but there's always behaviors behind each number, each data. And, people are missing the point that you can't just change the numbers. You got to change the behaviors that drive the numbers.
That influences it.
It. And too many people are focused on making numbers look good and forget about what really drives the numbers. And that's like a big problem in the corporate world. And many people are struggling to understand the connection between behaviors and issues of diversity and inclusion. They're not able to relate how just by being a good human, having the humanistic behaviors of treating everyone the way they should be, they would like to be treated, the platinum rule, as we call it, is simply the first step in inclusion. But we try to complicate it. We want to try to make big campaigns or call it out, but don't give solutions, how to solve it. Solutions isn't just like, here's data to show 99.99% of the time we didn't miss our social media post about D&I. But it's about how are we truly making a difference, and no one's able to connect to it, talk about it. We're talking about how leaders are, not inclusive, not, don't really value diversity and inclusion, don't understand the value of it. But really, who's talking to them about their behaviors? Who's really making them understand that it's their behaviors that they need to have self-awareness around and approach it that way? And that's kind of where like my head is like, I don't think we can really solve this problem until there's a change in the people's mindsets and behaviors.
Totally.
Ultimately.
There's a metric. I don't know if it's measurable, but you Softway folks, we know this from experience that real change comes from being uncomfortable. And when I look at I challenge you to find me a really meaningful or impactful change that was comfortable, right? In anything, in life and business. And I think to me, it's an easy measuring stick to kind of go back to everything we just talked about, right? Like when you look at performative acts on social media, those are comfortable. Like you don't have to do anything. You just post it. Saying D&I instead of diversity inclusion is comfortable, right? When you when you rely on data but don't look at behavior, that's comfortable, right?
Come on now.
So when you're like able to look at comfortability as a metric, it's easy to see, in my opinion, where change is actually being happened and when the on-off switch is being pulled. And we talked about consistency earlier. To me, we have to get consistent about being uncomfortable. Like we have to consistently get used to being uncomfortable. I don't know what that looks like. I don't have all the solutions, but I do know that when I look at, a boardroom saying, let's put another $2 million to our D&I efforts, that they just go back home and go, play golf, wherever it is. You're like, that's comfortable. They're like, great decision. We solved the problem. Let's move on. That was clearly comfortable. But when you see CEOs and other businesses making real change, real impactful strides, it is hard. And it's not just hard on the people. It's hardest at the top or at the people who have to actually make a change. And we've seen that time and time again. It requires uncomfortability, no matter what form that takes. And I think that's just something I'm not trying to oversimplify it because there's so much to that. But everything we've said, to me, just ties back to something that we say a lot at Softway is like people prefer comfort over progress. You're always going to. Yeah, go ahead, Mo. Go ahead.
I was just going to say but I think many people are misunderstanding uncomfortability with polarizing, because if you're thinking just by going and telling people you've been racist and you're racist, and I know there's a place and time for it, but if we're generalizing it, that's not uncomfortability. If I'm coming from the opposite lens, then you could be polarizing them and distancing them even further from your goal that you're trying to achieve. So how do we bring them to that change through uncomfortability, but without making them polarized and just run away from it? And I think that's the missing point. Like I think we need to find that what is the way to make them uncomfortable, but learn, but not make them polarized and run away. And I think that's where I would say that we have to clarify that.
Yeah, that's a good clarification.
I think it starts with like JeVon telling that story on the previous podcast, the stories that he's told so far, like they are uncomfortable to listen to. I don't know if I just told you that, JeVon, but like your stories are uncomfortable to listen to, not because they should be hidden and right, but because I've never lived that life. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I don't even know how to ask questions. Is it appropriate to ask questions, right? Like those stories bring that discomfort forward, but you also don't want to stop listening and learning. And I think it's that sort of conversation that Jeff and Muhammad are having, where when you really sort of want to get into that place of like really, helping people understand, it is in lived experiences. It is in people sharing their story. And it's also in people understanding how to engage after that. Because when you think about a lot of these conversations that people are having, these crucial conversations, as they call them internally, no one knows how to engage after truth comes out.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
What do we do now? Like, who's supposed to tell us what to do, right? Like, leaders have not been trained and have not been given tools. The people that are telling their stories are like, okay, everybody's quiet. Did I upset someone? Like, am I right? And so it's just that awkward piece. And I think that's something that when we think about pushing people further along towards goals, towards the outcomes that we seek, like that power, right? Like, after you watch a great movie, what do you do afterward? Right? It's made you uncomfortable. It's challenged your thoughts. Like, who do you share with people? Do you write about it? Like, do you go back and rewatch it again? Like, what do you do? And I think it's that same sort of pathway that has to be figured out for many corporates. And I think that it's contextual, meaning there's not one way to do it right. I think it's what's best for the organization and the situation. But JeVon, you were going to say something?
I was to Muhammad's point earlier as well. Why change will be slow is you all know this. We tend to gravitate to those that we have most in common with. And even if, how many times have some of us hung out with a person from a different background, a different race, a different religion, and once you sat with them 10, 15, 30 minutes, you're like, oh shit, Frank's really cool. But you went into it with a different mindset, like, I don't know their background. And so where we are right now as a society, if you look at the majority of the people who are leading Fortune 500 companies, the great majority are white men. And those white men got there by a certain playbook. Name, went to the certain schools, come from the certain background. And so as promotions come about and people start to rise through corporate America, you tend to promote and gravitate to those that you understand, that you have most in common with. And I shared this with people as well. And again, another eye-opener for people. It's very uncomfortable for people to be like, oh shit, he's mixed race and his dad was a pimp with 23 kids. Like, get away. And I don't understand that. And to say, I don't know where my last name comes from. My mom was an orphan. I got a GED. Now, I don't fall into the playbook. And so now you're very uncomfortable because you don't know what do we do with that guy? And so, but here's what's funny. You can take a Black person from a low-income community, JeVon McCormick. You can take a Hispanic person from a low-income community, let's say Rosalia Rodriguez. And because white America can't identify with those backgrounds, you can take a white person from a low economic community that may be named Steve Smith. And if nothing else, at least the people who are at the top of the food chain in corporate America, they can say, okay, you're white, I'm white, great. Your name is Steve Smith. Okay, I can help you get out of that situation and help you come up. Whereas LaQuanda, Martavius, JeVon, Rosalia, I don't know that background, and that's uncomfortable for me because I don't know your background. And here's the last piece. In my mind, they go together, but other people are probably like, where the hell is he going with this? It's funny too, in our country, if I say to you right now, to most people, I actually did this on stage at a keynote. And one gentleman was brave, white guy, man, that guy was brave. I said, if I say low income communities to you right now, and I say welfare, first thing that comes to your mind, and he brought it. He said, Black. And I said, what's the second thing? He goes, brown. And I said, but what if I told you that there are more white people in this country on welfare than there are Black and brown people combined? And he goes, is that true? And I go, yeah. And he's like, holy shit, I never knew that. And those are the things that when you, again, we'll go back to our profit margins, you keep putting this stuff top of mind, you have to start breaking the mold and start calling it what it is. No offense to my man, Brian Moynihan, that runs Bank of America, but Brian Moynihan come on, Brian. You know, Brian doesn't know JeVon McCormick and Pimp Father. And it's so, and I don't say that to pick on him. I'm just saying that those are the things that we tend to gravitate towards the people that we know, that we're most comfortable with. In the way the structure is set up, those individuals who reside at the top have brought along the people that they are most comfortable with, which is mainly white people. Chris, I know you've heard this before. I cannot tell you how many times, matter of fact, I even wrote a piece about this. I was on a podcast. I was on the cover of a magazine. Oh, man, guys, listen to this one. You're going to love this. I was on the cover of a CEO leadership magazine. On the cover was myself, General Petraeus, 4-star General Petraeus, Heisman Trophy winner Bo Jackson, the hedge fund billionaire Leon Cooperman, the CEO of Anheuser-Busch, me, and there were several other people in there. So we're all on the cover of this magazine. So we're being interviewed, podcast style, but it was live. And the gentleman that was interviewing, at the time, I was still going by JT. He says, "What does JT stand for?" And I said, "JeVon Thomas." And you know what his response was? "Oh, it sounds like an athlete's name." Wow. And so in that moment, I had a choice. Do I lose my shit? Put him in his place? Don't get to be on the magazine? Or do I smile? Keep going so I can get on that magazine, so I can show kids where I come from that, hey, we can get here. May not always be fair. We may have to bite our lip. Oh, but damn it, we can get here. Then he went on to say, oh my gosh, and Chris, you're gonna love this one. You're so articulate.
Oh.
As opposed to what?
Do you know how many times I've heard that as feedback, as positive feedback?
God, yes. You are so articulate.
And I was like, I've never heard you say that to so-and-so. And I'm
right.
like, huh?
Right. And so again, I had to sit there and even talked about it. He was like, wow, you know, with only a GED, you're very articulate. So you could tell in that moment, he was like, my God, uneducated, mixed race, father of a pimp. You know, his dad was a pimp. But he's articulate and he has an athlete's name and he succeeded. What's funny, what comes next though, is because I was articulate, I had found success, I did make a lot of money. You let me in. You let me in. I was allowed to be on the cover of the magazine. And because I made it a little more comfortable for you, because now I came to your side of the table, but that's why you let me in. Because if I didn't make millions of dollars, if I didn't make it to the CEO chair, you wouldn't have let me in.
Yep. Oh, go ahead, Mohammed.
Can I just say something? So I've had my own perceptions of, you know, different race and religions and ethnicities and so forth. So I've been blessed to have coworkers like Jeff, Chris, Frank, and others at Softway who correct me, who talk to me when I say something that might be inappropriate or might say something that is not considered acceptable. So I ask, like, is there not an opportunity where people can, like, I sometimes for me it's just ignorance, pure ignorance, or it could be my biases, all of the above. But I personally don't think I would be on this journey of learning and accepting and adapting and like getting my cultural competency improved if it hadn't been for the people coming to me and educating me and telling me, Mo, you know what you said there? I understand your intent, but that's not appropriate. Or Mo, you know, when you said this thing, that's not right. You don't say things like that. And I asked, like, who's going to do that in a way where, like, the love they show for me, they come and they take their time to educate me, inform me. And from there on, I don't get like discouraged. I'm like, first, I am a little embarrassed, I won't lie, but more than anything, I'm like, okay, I really didn't know that this is how I made you feel. I really didn't know that I was doing this. And once that awareness was brought to me, I've tried with consistency to make sure I don't do that again, or I aspire to change how I behave or say those things. And in fact, it's made me more vulnerable and open to go to Chris and say, Chris, can you explain this to me? I don't know what this means. Can you help me understand? This is like, talk to me about this saying that I've heard on TV. I don't know what this means. Or I talk to Jeff and I'm like, Jeff, I've played a game. I don't want to call the game's name on here, but like, what does it mean? And like, he's helped correct me many times. So how do we get to a state of where we can get leaders to be educated, informed, so that they can bring about self-awareness? Because maybe sometimes they just don't have that awareness at all.
So for me, Muhammad, it takes the person. I've heard people say this before. You say, "Oh my God, I didn't know." You didn't want to know. See, you're seeking knowledge. You're seeking to understand. Some people just don't want to know. And to your point, a great example. So we hired an individual, and this individual goes by pronouns. And this is the first time I've actually worked with someone that prefers pronouns. And I went in, I sat down, I had a conversation. I said, hey, I'm going to put it on the line. I don't understand it. Will you educate me and bring me up to speed to, okay, the pronouns? And they said that they have a partner. I said, okay, so is your partner male, female? And so but what was great, this individual sat with me, answered my question, and I was coming from a place of seeking to understand. The problem is most people aren't coming at this from a place of seeking to understand, and most people don't, just straightforward, Muhammad, most people don't give a damn to understand.
Agreed.
Like I said, those leaders that are at the top, they don't care to understand, okay, what's it like coming from a low economic community and having to rise all of these different areas and really navigate this damn minefield of trying to get to the level. You're not seeking to understand, because if you were, you would actually go and ask those questions and sit down. But you only want to claim seeking to understand when they say the wrong thing and they get called on it, and that's when I was trying to. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. You weren't trying to. Yeah, don't backpedal. Last one, Muhammad, I had someone say the other day, that literally this was like 2 weeks ago, older white person referenced, and he said colored people, and I was like, whoa. We actually, we stopped saying colored back when they had signs that said white only and colored only. It's now if you want to say people of color, okay. Different comment, but colored people, yeah, we want to leave that one back in 1957. And so
Wow.
it takes people speaking up. It takes someone willing to learn and say, hey, that's on me. I apologize. I come from that error. And it also takes people to understand that there are people who come from that error who used to say those things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, granted, they need to eliminate them, but they also have to be educated on no one's saying colored anymore.
Yeah. And
no, it reminds me of, go ahead.
I was just gonna say quickly, like my idea is, don't forget that story, Chris. I really want to hear it. Leaders, it's a responsibility to create a culture of curiosity, like be okay to be curious. And once you create a culture of curiosity, like JeVon, you're sharing so many incredible examples of this, you give people permission to be curious and to explore and to learn. And so, I'm coming back to this position of what leadership really means and what it looks like. And if a leader is willing to say, I would like to intentionally sit down with you and truly understand the meaning behind the usage of pronouns. What does it mean to you? Why is it important to you? Other people are seeing that, they're recognizing the value in that. And as you build empathy towards that individual situation, it creates an effect of other people seeing it as well. It happens, right? So what I'm thinking about is like, man, go in with a growth mindset, be curious, and engage with people when they look or act different than you. And when you do that, you create an opportunity for others to do the same. And that opens up relationship. And once you have a relationship with people, you realize that they're not so different, but their differences are valuable, right? So anyway, that was my thought. Chris?
Yeah.
I was just gonna tell a quick story. This is actually my mom's story, but she tells this, I tell it. But it's so she graduated in the mid 70s, and she came down to Texas from North Carolina and was an accountant and got a job here in Houston, and she was getting along fine. And one day, a white male coworker calls her outside of her name, and that word being the N word. And, she is right, but she doesn't say anything. She just leaves for the day, goes home, but she comes back. And just so you know, for listeners and watchers, my grandfather is an avid hunter. So when he moved her down here, he gave her his gun, right? Like made sure that she could be protected and whatnot since he wasn't going to be here. And she, got her cool, collected her thoughts, and actually came back to the office and in the parking garage, parked right next to the gentleman's car who called her outside of her name, had her gun in the front seat. And, the security guard at the time was also African-American, so he let her in, right? And he's like, because it had spread around the office that she had been called that, right? And, just so you know, if you don't know, Black people talk. So even if we don't congregate, openly, we do talk. And so he allowed her in. And, when the gentleman came to his car, she was in her driver's seat. And she said, "Hey, come over here. And she let him lean in. And she was like, "So I just want to let you know, if you ever have the desire to call me outside of my name again, we might have some problems." And she looked at her passenger seat where the gun was sitting. Never, ever had another issue with the gentleman afterward. And I'm bringing up that story not to use threats, but sometimes it takes that type of approach to get people to understand what is and what is not allowed. And at that time, that was what, she did. And again, no issues after that. But as you brought up that story, it reminds me of that story because whenever I hear it, I'm like, have I gotten a little bit of hurt in me in certain situations? Probably so, maybe, right? But when we think about change and when we think about issues in the workplace and when we think about, being human in the workplace, sometimes it does take those layers to be sort of, disrobed. And sometimes it's not comfortable. And sometimes it might feel aggressive, abrasive, or downright threatening. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes sometimes.
Hey, Chris, you're going to, here's another one of those consistency things for me. And I'm not telling people what they should or shouldn't be called. I cringe because I believe if we go back and we look at it when it started being the politically correct term to say, I refuse to be called African-American. I'm half white, half Black. And you know why? Because we never said, oh, there's a so-and-so, they're a Sweden American. There's so-and-so, they're Scandinavian American. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why do I got to be labeled? And I can't just get half white, half Black, or white or Black. So I won't use the moniker. In fact, think about this. Elon Musk is African-American.
True.
He's got dual citizenship. So I, just for me, again, I'm not telling anybody what they should or shouldn't go by, but for me, I try to steer clear of what society has set up, again, in my mind, of these things that keep us apart from you're going to put a label on me, African-American. We know exactly who he's talking about right off the bat. I'm half white, half Black. I'm Black. I'm white. Period. I'm a person. And the worst question of all, I get this so many times. The worst question, what are you? I get that so many. I'm excuse my language. You guys can edit me out. I'm fucking human. That's what I am.
And scene.
I am fucking human. I'm like, come on. I mean, what are you? Now, I don't mind if you ask what's my nationality. Okay, great, fair question. But what are you? Seriously? Think about it.
I get that question a lot.
Yes. But be fair. And I'm not picking on Frank. Frank, when's the last time you've been asked, what are you?
Never.
That's interesting.
So, anyway, there's my 3 cents.
No, fair
Never.
point.
Well, you're about to set me off on a rant about that question with Asians, but we don't have time. So this you just locked yourself into another episode, JeVon.
Hey man, you guys,
3.
this is we're about to start. I mean, hey, Joe Rogan, we're coming.
Once we hit, listen, it's needed to be. I'm gonna stop talking. Okay.
You should just join us. Just be a regular co-host of the show.
We should invite JeVon randomly for like different interviews. Where we're like, and JeVon's here, and then you take it, and you.
Hey, you know how awesome that would be. People are like, who the hell is this?
We'll have to hire an assistant for our executive producer Maggie just to do edits for bleeping out words. But that's
no. We're just gonna put the little E. We're just gonna put the little E on it, and we're good.
Expensive.
Think about. Can you imagine? I come on with you all. You have your guest, and I start talking, and the person looks and they go, "What are you?"
And then you know what to say.
Oh man, yeah.
And then we'll fire them right on the spot. We'll be like,
yeah, they're fired.
They're done. Podcast over.
Oh my gosh,
man, you guys, seriously, I mean this with all sincerity. Man, you are doing it next level. This is awesome. To even I've been sitting here looking. You know, we've got Muhammad, we've got Chris, we've got Frank, Jeff. I mean, this is how it's supposed to be done, and with love, respect, acceptance. Willingness to learn. This is phenomenal. I really appreciate you all allowing me to be a part of this. I sincerely mean that. This is if the world, our society could operate the way we are on this podcast, it would be phenomenal. The only we need to get Maggie in here to get some woman representation too. But
there we go.
Yeah, this is great. I really appreciate you all putting this together.
No, absolutely. Awesome. JeVon, thank you once again for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. I wasn't joking that when we try to get this down to 4 people at a time, we were like, I guess we'll all just jump in here. We'll do 5 because we all want to be here for this conversation. It's always fun. And so, yeah, thank you so much. And I'll close out with thanking our listeners. Going to plug the book again. It's available on Amazon, everywhere else you can find books. Just check out loveasabusinessstrategy.com for more information. And also at Love as a Business Strategy, the podcast, we're posting new episodes every Wednesday. If there's something you'd like us to cover or talk about or feedback you have, we love feedback. Hit us up at softway.com/labs, LAABS. So leave us a review, send us love, do all the nice things, tell your friends, and message JeVon on social media. Tell him to come back for a 3rd episode.
Hey, I will come back. Hey, we're gonna do
Round
this
12.
like the Fast and Furious franchise. Were they like on 9 now?
We're on 9, and they're getting better. Apparently, getting better.
Right.
So listen, we haven't even hit the pinnacle.
That's it. As long as I get to be the Rock, we're good. We're good.
Let's go.
Frank. I don't know, Frank.
Listen, I thank The Rock in the back of this book. I really do. He's in the back of this book. Anyway,
nice.
Anyway.
All right, folks. With that, we will see everybody next week. Thank you, Muhammad, Chris, Frank, and especially JeVon. We're signing out. See you later.
Thank you all. Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks, Maggie. We love you.